She didn't speak when they handed her the briefing file. Just watched as the room buzzed around her. Laughter, pens clicking, boots scraping on concrete. And her silent. Why had they seated her at the far end of the table, like a guest? Or worse, like someone they'd already decided wouldn't last? The colonel's voice was clipped, detached. Extraction point Delta. Window is narrow, 0 tolerance for delays. Maps flickered on the projector screen, red dots blinking like wounds. She stared at them, those blinking dots, while her thumb pressed hard into her own palm under the table. A habit, something to remind herself she was still here, still real. But there was something she hadn't told them. Not yet. The room erupted in chatter as the meeting ended. Chairs scraped back. Coffee cups were abandoned half full. And she sat still. No one asked her if she had questions. No one even said her name. They didn't know she had memorized every inch of the terrain 2 nights ago when the file first hit her desk. Didn't know she'd already marked wind directions, choke points, fallback zones. Didn't know this wasn't just a mission to her. Because it couldn't be. Outside, the wind carried dust like old memories. Her boots crunched the gravel as she walked to the armory, each step heavier than the last. A mechanic shouted from under a Humvee. Someone laughed near the comms tent. Ordinary sounds of a bass breathing. She wondered if they noticed how hollow she felt. She passed the mirror by the armory door. Stopped. Her reflection stared back, jaw clenched, eyes shadowed with sleepless nights. She barely recognized the woman there. She'd joined to serve, to protect. But now, she was here to redeem something she couldn't speak aloud. Not even to herself. The armorer barely looked up when she signed the rifle out. Scopes zeroed, he muttered. She nodded, didn't trust her voice. The rifle's weight settled across her shoulder, like responsibility itself. Night came without ceremony. The bass dimmed to whispers and distant generators. She lay awake in her cot, staring at the canvas ceiling, the hum of a fluorescent light trembling above her. Sleep wouldn't come, because every time she closed her eyes, she saw the boy's face. His face the day she left. The way he'd watched her go, one small hand raised, not waving, just frozen. Her son. They told her he'd stopped asking about her. Stopped setting her place at the table. Stopped waiting by the window. She pressed her fist against her mouth until her teeth hurt. No tears came. They never did anymore. She wasn't sure if that was strength or something broken beyond repair. Morning bled into gray light and orders. Convoy wheels clattered, radios crackled. She walked toward the chopper with her gear, the smell of jet fuel biting the air. The others were already there, clustered like a pack. Laughing about something. Their voices faltered when they saw her. One nodded stiffly, another looked away. They didn't trust her. Not yet. Fine. Trust was a currency she'd stopped asking for. She only needed their respect. And that she would earn the hard way. The rotor blades howled as they lifted off, whipping the air into chaos. She kept her eyes on the horizon as the base shrank below, shrinking, fatting, until it was just desert and silence. In the headset, the team leader's voice cut through. Rules are simple, stay tight, no heroics. If someone falls behind, we leave them. She said nothing. Just checked the safety on her rifle again, and again, until her knuckles went white. Outside, the world rolled beneath them, rivers carving scars through stone, mountains rising like old bones. Beautiful. And indifferent. When they landed, heat slammed into them like a fist. The air shimmered, flies hovered near their packs. She shouldered her gear without a word and fell into line. Each step kicked up dust. Each breath tasted of grit. They moved silent through the broken hills, every sound magnified, the click of gear straps, the whisper of boots on sand, a crow's cry far off like something warning them to turn back. No one spoke to her, but she could feel their eyes sometimes, sliding toward her when they thought she wouldn't notice. Let them doubt. Let them watch. They would see. Hours passed. The sun burned down, shadows shrinking to nothing. Her shoulders screamed, her lips cracked. But she kept moving. Because at the center of this mission lay the man who had betrayed them all. And they didn't know. He had once been her commanding officer. And she had followed him into hell. The first shot came from nowhere. A single crack, sharp and distant, slicing the still air. Everyone dropped. Instinct, dust exploded around them. Heartbeats thundered in their ears. She hit the ground hard, cheek pressed into warm dirt. Her rifle swung forward in her hands, her eye finding the scope without thought. Static hissed in the comms. Contact northwest ridge. She already saw it. A flicker of movement. A flash of sunlight on glass. She exhaled slow, shoulders steady. Her shot came a breath later. Silent, precise. The flash disappeared. They waited. Nothing moved. Clear, someone whispered, like they were afraid sound might bring it back. The leader's voice came tight and low. Move now. Boots pounded, packs jostled. They pushed forward faster, through gullies and broken stone, every shadow now a threat. No one spoke to her. But she felt it, the change. A ripple in the air. They had seen what she could do. By sundown they found the ruins, an abandoned way station, half collapsed into the earth. They ducked inside, grateful for the broken shade. Someone lit a tiny stove. The smell of scorched rations filled the dark. She sat apart, knees drawn up, her rifle across her lap. Sweat dried on her skin like salt. Her hands trembled now that no one was watching. She clenched them until they stopped. Across the room, Alvarez told a joke too loud. Laughter flickered, brittle and thin. Then faded. Silence settled. A heavy silence, thick with what they weren't saying. Finally the leader, Callan, looked at her. His face unreadable. Sniper school. Her eyes met his. She gave the smallest nod. Top of your class. She didn't answer. He studied her for a moment longer, then looked away. The questions he didn't ask hung in the air like ghosts. Later, as they all dozed, she stayed awake, back against the cold wall. Sleep was dangerous. Because dreams meant memories. And memories were worse than bullets. She saw him sometimes, her old Captain Rourke. Tall, calm. The kind of voice that could talk men through fire. He had believed in her before anyone else had. Had told her once, during a sandstorm in Kandahar. You've got something most don't, not talent, fire, don't let them snuff it out. And she had believed him. Until the day he walked away with classified intel and left 3 of their own bleeding in the dust. They called him a ghost now. Said he'd built his own network out here in the wastelands. Selling secrets, burning bridges. She knew the truth was worse. Because he had known every one of their weaknesses. And he would use them all. And if she didn't stop him, someone else would die. Morning came with thin light and the smell of rusted metal. They moved out at first light, quieter now. Different. They had seen her shoot. They had seen how still she could be. And now they watched her like a compass. Like maybe she could sense things they couldn't. She wished they were wrong about that. Because she could feel something. A weight in the air. Like the world was holding its breath. By midday the wind shifted. Hotter, meaner. The radio crackled, fragments of voices cut off mid-word. Then silence. Callan raised a fist, they froze. No birds. No flies. Nothing. She dropped to one knee, scope sweeping the hills. The world shimmered under the sun, waves of heat bending the horizon. Then there. Tracks. Fresh. Boot soles heavy staggered. One set, then three more. Heading east. Vast. Her heart clenched. Rourke. He was close. They tracked through ravines until the sun slid low, the light bleeding gold across the rocks. Then they found it. An outpost. Crude but fortified. Sheets of corrugated metal, razor wire makeshift towers. Men patrolled the walls. Foreign weapons. No insignias. Mercs. She sank low behind a ridge, glassing the place. Her pulse steadied. Her mind slowed. Rourke had always liked high ground and escape tunnels. She scanned for them, knowing how he thought. And there, a narrow path carved behind the outpost, almost invisible. He was here. She knew it like knowing a storm is coming, even before the clouds form. Callan crawled up beside her. Intel said nothing about this many. They're not here for long, she murmured. They're waiting. For what? Her jaw tightened. For him. Callan's eyes flicked to her. Something passed between them. A question he didn't ask. She was grateful for that. They pulled back to regroup. The team muttered quietly, counting ammo, checking sights. Tension thickened the air like smoke. She knelt apart, scraping lines into the dirt with her knife. Paths, escape vectors, angles of fire. Her hands moved on their own. Her mind somewhere else entirely. Back to her son. The last message he'd sent her. Just one line, typed crooked on a cheap tablet. Do you still know my voice? She had read it until the screen dimmed. But she hadn't answered. Couldn't. Because if she let herself hear his voice in her mind, she might never put this rifle down again. And this wasn't over. Not until she faced Rourke. Not until she ended what he started. Night fell like a blade. Black. Sharp. Silent. They moved in the dark, crawling over rock and wire, hearts pounding like war drums. She led. No one told her to. No one even spoke. But she felt it, their eyes on her back, waiting for her to choose the path. Every step was a whisper of danger. Every breath borrowed. Her scope caught pale shapes, mercs slouched at their posts, rifles dangling. One yawned. Another smoked, the ember burning like a signal in the dark. She marked them all. And in the silence, she felt something shift inside her. For the first time, they were moving as one. They reached the service tunnel. Just wide enough to crawl. The smell of old oil and damp earth wrapped around them. Her chest brushed the ground with each breath. Her fingers dug into cold stone. Behind her, Alvarez whispered a prayer in Spanish. Ahead, only darkness. She crawled faster. The tunnel rose, angled, opened into shadowed steel beams. And then, a faint sound. Footsteps. Deliberate, unhurried. Her blood ran cold. Rourke. She froze, heart slamming against the earth. It had been 3 years. But she knew that rhythm. That slow, measured pace. Her hand tightened on the rifle. Every instinct screamed to rise, to shoot, to end it. But she didn't. Not yet. Because he wasn't alone. 2 more shadows moved with him, laughing softly. And one was limping. A hostage. Her throat locked. This wasn't just a kill mission anymore. This was a rescue. And no one else knew. Not yet. The air inside the outpost was colder than the night outside. It smelled of oil and burned plastic. Old blood in the dust. She crouched in shadow, heartbeat trembling in her throat, eyes fixed through the crack in the rusted sheet wall. Rourke moved like a ghost. Even now. Even after everything. He walked slow, measured, shoulders loose like he didn't believe anything could touch him. The limp was beside him. A man hands bound, head down, every step a flinch of pain. The sound of dragging boots scraped across her bones. Alvarez shifted behind her, whispered, "Who's the guy?" She didn't answer, because the sound of Rourke's voice cut through the dark then. Low, smooth, familiar enough to hollow her out. "Tomorrow we move east. The convoy is ready. If they follow, burn everything. Burn everything." She could almost hear him saying it to her years ago. After an ambush, when they'd lost 2 men. When he'd looked at her and said, "Survival isn't clean. You do what keeps your people breathing." Her people. She closed her eyes for half a second, then opened them sharper. Not anymore. Callan's hand found her shoulder. A silent question. "Plan." She drew in a slow breath, pointed to the hostage, then 2 fingers to her eyes. "Get him out first." Callan's nod was small, clipped. "Trust. Real this time." It hit her like a spark in dry grass. Dangerous. Beautiful. They split. Silent practiced. Ghosts through the metal bones of the place. She took high ground, steel scaffolding above the floor. Every step whispered under her boots. She lay flat, rifle cradled, eyes sweeping the shadows. Below, Callan and Alvarez crept closer, knives ready, shapes flickering through pale light. The hostage stumbled. Rourke caught his arm without looking, steadying him like he was nothing more than cargo. Her scope tracked him. Chest, breath, pulse. She could end it. One pull. 3 years of ghosts gone. Her finger found the trigger. And froze. Because Rourke turned his head. And looked straight up at her. Her lungs stopped. No one could see her. No one. But his eyes. They locked on her like he had known exactly where she'd be. Exactly how she'd move. A slow smile ghosted his mouth. Then he turned away. Like she wasn't even worth a warning. Her hands shook against the stock. Sweat stung her eyes. He knew. He had known she would come. And he wanted her to. "Move," Callan hissed in the calm. She blinked hard, forced her body to obey. "Copy," she breathed. They dropped the guards in silence. Knives and shadows. One by one. She didn't even feel her feet touch the ground again. Just sudden cold steel under her palms as she cut the hostage's ties. His wrists were raw. His lips cracked. "Can you walk?" she whispered. His eyes fluttered open. Something wild and broken flickered there. Then he nodded. "Good." Callan hauled him up and melted into the dark with Alvarez at his back. She stayed behind. Because Rourke was gone. Vanished. The radio crackled in her ear. Callan's voice, low and urgent. "Extraction in 10, we have to move." She didn't move. Her gaze swept the shadows, searching, every muscle screaming to run. But her bones locked her in place. He had left this place too easily. Too clean. He was setting the board. Like he always did. And if she walked away now, he'd make the next move on his terms. No. Not again. She followed. Through corridors of rust and darkness. Every corner a held breath. Every sound a blade. Her boots found his tracks. Not prints but patterns. Open doors where they should have been shut. A faint smell of cologne under the rot. Breadcrumbs. Meant for her. A memory stirred. Afghanistan. Dust stormed so thick they'd tied themselves together with rope to keep from losing each other. He walked at the front, and she had followed his silhouette through the swirling void. She followed now too, but the rope was gone. She found him on the roof, standing in the moonlight, coat drifting in the wind, looking down at the desert like it belonged to him. The sight of him hit her like a punch. How unchanged he was. How alive. "Hello, Lieutenant," he said without turning. Her throat closed. No one had called her that in years. Not since the inquiry stripped her rank and sent her to logistics. A quiet exile while he became a ghost story. "I'm not your lieutenant," she said. "Maybe not theirs either," he murmured. "Not yet." Her jaw locked. "You betrayed them." "I set them free." She almost laughed. Bitter, hollow. "You left them to die." "You followed me," he said softly. "You always followed me." She lifted the rifle. Slow. Deliberate. His eyes flicked to her, still calm, like this was all some private game. "You can pull that trigger," he said. "Or you can listen, just once." "Why?" "Because you want the truth more than you want revenge." Her breath snagged. Her hands trembled on the stock. Because he was right. And he knew it. "Walk away with me," he said. "There's more going on than you were told. You think this mission ends here. It doesn't. They're lying to you like they lied about me." She blinked. Lied. The word rang in her chest like struck metal. "Prove it," she whispered. "I will," he said. "But not here. They'll be coming soon, too many ears." He stepped back toward the edge of the roof. The moon carved silver across his face. "Next ridge 20 miles east, noon tomorrow." Her voice cracked. "Why me?" He smiled. "Because you're the only one who still matters to me." Then he stepped back and vanished into the dark. For a long time, there was only the wind. Cold. Empty. She lowered the rifle. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Callan's voice tore through the calm. "Where the hell are you? Birds here. We're leaving." She swallowed hard. "On my way." The flight back blurred. Black desert scrolling under the rotors. The hostage half-conscious, Alvarez tending him, Callan silent at the door. No one spoke to her. No one asked where she had been. But she saw it in their eyes, the questions. The flicker of trust fraying at the edges. And for the first time, she didn't know if she was still on their side. Or anyone. Back on base, the night smelled of fuel and wet concrete. She walked past the barracks light without slowing. Past the clatter of distant laughter. Straight to the showers, stripped off her gear, stood under cold water until her skin went numb. She pressed her forehead to the tile. Eyes closed. Breath shaking. He was alive. He had seen her. And he had let her walk away. Her mind kept replaying his words. "They lied about me." Could it be true? Could they have sent her here not to kill a traitor, but to silence someone who knew too much? She bit her lip until blood came. She couldn't tell them. Not yet. Because if she was wrong, it would destroy what little trust they had left in her. And if she was right, then none of them were safe. She walked back to her cot, hair still dripping. Laid down. Stared at the dark. Her son's message burned behind her eyelids. "Do you still know my voice?" She wanted to answer. To tell him she was coming home. But home wasn't real anymore. Not until she knew the truth. Not until she decided what kind of leader she was going to be. The kind they ordered her to be. Or the kind she needed to become. No one had asked her to lead. But they were following her anyway. And if she failed them, she'd lose more than just the mission. She'd lose herself. The base felt smaller in daylight. Sunlight bled over concrete walls, turning them pale and thin. The air smelled of fuel, dust, and something fragile, like peace pretending to be permanent. She sat alone at the edge of the motor pool, boots dangling off a steel platform, watching mechanics argue over a broken axle. Her hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee gone cold. Every sound felt distant. Callan's voice earlier still echoed. "We need to debrief. Full sitrep, including your movement gap on the roof." Movement gap. As if she just drifted. She nodded. Said she was clearing the east side. They hadn't believed her. Not fully. Trust was a glass she could feel cracking in her hands. And she couldn't tell them the truth. Not yet. Alvarez found her there. Dropped down beside her without asking. He always did that, like sitting was an act of rebellion, not invitation. "You didn't sleep," he said quietly. "Neither did you." He smirked. "Difference is, I look good tired." She didn't smile. He watched her for a moment, then his tone softened. "You froze on that roof, not judging, just. I've never seen you freeze." Her throat tightened. "Maybe I'm not what you think I am." "Good," he said. "Because people who think they're unbreakable usually are." That cracked something small inside her. A laugh that didn't quite make it out. Just a breath. Alvarez stood stretched and left without looking back. No pressure. No questions. It almost made her trust him. Almost. By noon, the mission debrief began. Dim room. Projector hum. Static maps on the wall. Callan's voice measured, clinical. Casualty count 0. Hostage stable. Merc outpost cleared. Then, the primary target, Rourke, was not confirmed on sight. Her pulse jumped. "Intel may have been faulty," someone said. Callan's eyes flicked to her. No expression. "Or," he said, "he slipped the net." Silence rippled. "Which means," he continued, "he knows we're hunting him now." She felt the weight of every gaze, like heat on her skin. She forced her face still. Her voice even. "Then we finish the hunt." Afterward, Callan cornered her in the hall. No words at first. Just stood there, blocking the way. Finally, "You've changed." She blinked. "Excuse me." "You move different, think different. Like you know more than you're saying." Her chest tightened. "I'm adapting," she said. "To what?" She didn't answer. Callan studied her for a long moment, then stepped aside. "Be careful what that costs you." The rest of the day bled slow. She spent hours at the range, cycling rounds through her rifle until the barrel burned her palms. Then gear checks. Maps. Logistics forms. Anything to keep her hands moving. But her mind kept circling one place. 20 miles east. The ridge. Noon. Rourke. That night she packed quietly. Rations. Ammo. One spare magazine tucked inside her boot. Every motion precise, deliberate. As if care could make the choice less dangerous. She left her team no note. Not because she didn't care. Because if they knew, they'd try to follow. And if they followed, they might not come back. This wasn't their risk to carry. It was hers. She slipped out before dawn. The world still dark, sharp with cold. Sand crunched softly under her boots. She walked fast. Heart steady. Mind jagged. Every step away from base peeled something off her. Duty. Trust. The thin armor of belonging. Until it was just her again. Bare. Alone. The ridge rose out of the desert like the spine of something ancient. No cover. No mercy. She climbed slow, fingers brushing rough stone, eyes sweeping the empty horizon. Sweat cooled on her neck, wind whispering dry against her ears. At the top, nothing, just wind and silence. And doubt. Had he lied? Lured her here to vanish again, make her chase ghosts until she crumbled. She sat on a flat rock, rifle across her knees, trying to breathe. The sky stretched wide and cruel. Then a voice behind her. I knew you'd come alone. She spun, rifle up. Rourke stood 10 feet away, unarmed, hands loose at his sides. No guards. No theatrics. Just him. Her pulse slammed. You're late, she said. Had to be sure you weren't followed. You always assume I'll follow you. His eyes softened. No, I just never stopped hoping you would. She almost fired. Almost. But something in his tone, a flicker of the man he used to be, stilled her finger. Talk, she said. He lowered himself onto the sand like it was just another campfire night, not the edge of a knife. They told you I betrayed them, he said. Sold intel, got our people killed. You did, she snapped. No, I found what command was hiding. They were running off-books ops, no oversight, no accountability. And when I tried to expose it, they burned me first. She shook her head. Lies. Then ask yourself this. His voice sharpened, like steel under velvet. Why send you? Why not a kill team or drones or someone who didn't know me? Her stomach clenched. Because it had gnawed at her too. Why her? Why now? He saw it on her face and pressed in. They chose you because they knew you, hesitate. Because they knew part of you still believed in me. And if you did, you might bring back proof instead of a body. Her throat closed. They sent me to kill you, she whispered. No, he said softly. They sent you to erase me. Wind whipped dry sand between them. The sun climbed harsh and merciless. Her mind reeled. Fragments of memory and doubt tangling like wire. Rourke had lied before. Manipulated. But he had never begged. And he wasn't begging now. Just waiting. Finally she said, if you're right, prove it. I will, he said. I can give you the files, names, coordinates, everything. But once you see it, you'll be marked too. Her pulse stumbled. Marked. There would be no going back. No safe return to the team. I can't abandon them, she said. You don't have to, Rourke murmured. Just lead them your way. Not command's way. A hawk screamed overhead, slicing the silence. Her eyes stung from the sun. Or maybe from something else. I don't know if I can do this, she said. Yes, you do, he said gently. You've been leading them since the day you picked up that rifle. They just haven't admitted it yet. Her breath shook. No one had asked her to lead. But maybe she was already doing it. And maybe that terrified her more than anything. Rourke stood. I'll drop the data at grid 17, 2 days. After that, if you don't come, I'll assume you chose them. He stepped past her, his shadow stretching long across the stone. She didn't stop him. Didn't even turn. Because the weight on her shoulders had changed shape. Heavier, but hers. By dusk she was back on base. The team looked up when she walked in. No one spoke. But she felt it, the silent questions. The flicker of doubt. And something else. They had kept moving while she was gone. Kept training, planning, breathing. Waiting. Not for orders. For her. She sank onto her cot, boots still on, staring at the ceiling fan slicing slow shadows across the wall. Her body was exhausted, her mind electric. Rourke was either a traitor or the only honest man left, and she was the hinge between them, between truth and duty, between what she owed and who she was becoming. Her son's message burned in her pocket like a coal. "Do you still know my voice?" She whispered to no one. "Not yet, but I will." She sat on the crumbling stone wall, legs trembling, boots dangling just above the sand. The sun had long slipped beneath the ridgeline, leaving only bruised purples and burnt orange bleeding across the horizon. For a moment there was silence. Real silence. The kind that makes you realize how loud your mind has been. And then footsteps behind her. Not rushed, not hesitant. Measured. She didn't turn. "I thought you hated heights," a voice said softly. Miller. Of course it was Miller. She stared at the darkening valley below. "I do." A pause, the faint clink of his canteen as he set it down beside her. "You froze on the cliff," he said, not accusing, just saying it aloud. She swallowed. Her mouth tasted of dust and regret. "I didn't freeze." Sure felt like it. Her shoulders stiffened. She waited for the bite, the mockery, the smirk. It didn't come. Instead, Miller lowered himself to sit beside her, hands resting loosely on his knees. His silhouette was just a cutout against the dying light. "You climbed anyway," he said quietly. She blinked. "You were shaking, thought your hands were going to slip, but you climbed." His tone carried something rare, not approval. Respect. Her throat tightened. She nodded, unable to trust her voice. They sat there, two shadows on a wall of old stone, while the team murmured below, preparing their meager dinner over a hiss of blue flame. The mission waited beyond the mountains. But for a breath, this was enough. Later, she pulled her sleeping roll into a corner of the ruined compound, away from the firelight. She lay awake again, staring up at a roof of fractured stars through the shattered beams above. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. She clenched them until they went numb. She hated that they saw her hesitate on that cliff. Hated that they might think fear lived in her bones. But fear did live there. And she carried it carefully, like a hidden blade. Because fear was honest. And honesty, she'd learned, kept you alive longer than bravado. Dawn cracked open the world in cold silence. They moved before the sun touched the peaks, breath steaming in the thin mountain air, boots crunching on frost. The path narrowed to a knife edge, cliffs yawning away on both sides. She kept her steps steady, eyes scanning the ridgelines, fingers resting lightly on the sling of her rifle. Somewhere beyond these mountains, their target was moving. Always moving. Always one step ahead. And always a step closer to her. By midday, the land changed. Green burst through the gray rock-like veins, scrub pines, stubborn grasses, a creek murmuring through the ravine. She almost forgot how to breathe when she saw water again. It shimmered in the sun, small and defiant. They stopped to refill canteens. Ray's crouched at the edge, splashing his face. "Feels like a trap," he muttered. "Everything feels like a trap," Miller replied, kneeling beside him. She stood a few feet back, watching the tree line. A crow rose from the branches, black wings cutting through the blue. And something in her chest twisted. Her son had drawn her a crow once. Said they were smarter than people thought. She still kept the crumpled drawing folded deep in her vest, close to her heart, though it was soft and fatting now. Her hand drifted there unconsciously. Then movement, a flicker of shadow across the ridge. Her body reacted before thought. Rifle up, breath held. Silence. Nothing. Just wind. But the others had seen her flinch. "Everything okay?" Miller asked. She lowered the scope, jaw tight. "Thought I saw something." Ray's scanned the rocks. "We're ghosts out here. If someone was watching, we'd be dead already." "Maybe," she murmured. Or maybe they were being allowed to get closer. By late afternoon, the sky thickened, clouds piling dark and low. Thunder muttered somewhere beyond the peaks. They reached the ridge just as the storm broke. Rain came hard and sudden, cold needles slicing their skin, turning stone to slick glass under their boots. Wind howled through the pass like it was alive. They fought for balance, packs dragging at their shoulders. Visibility collapsed to a blur of gray and white. Then gunfire. Sharp cracking real. The world exploded. She dove behind a boulder, mud spraying her face. Round sparked off stone. "Contact left," Ray's shouted. Adrenaline surged cold through her veins. Her scope found a flash muzzle flare high on the ridge. "Exhale. Squeeze." The figure dropped. Another appeared. Closer. The air reeked of wet earth and cordite. She shifted, ignoring the sting in her shoulder from the climb, ignoring the rain streaking her scope. Her heartbeat slowed into that old, eerie rhythm, calm in chaos. She fired. Silence. Except for the rain. Then Miller's voice through the comm. "Clear, I think." They waited, breathless. No return fire. Only thunder rolling away into distance. They found 2 bodies on the ridge. Worn boots, patched jackets, crude rifles. Not the man they were hunting. Scouts. Watching the trail. Ray's cursed under his breath. "They know we're coming now." "They already knew," she said quietly. The team looked at her. But no one argued. They pushed on through the storm until night bled into the valley like ink. Every bone in her body ached. Her clothes clung like wet skin. But they couldn't stop yet. Stopping meant being found. When they finally collapsed inside the crumbled skeleton of an old shepherd's hut, she couldn't feel her hands, could barely unbuckle her gear. She sat in the dark, back to the wall, while the others dozed in damp exhaustion. Rain dripped from a crack in the roof, steady and hollow. She watched it, counted each drop. Somewhere out there, he was waiting for them. The man who had once led her into fire. Who had once said she was the only one he trusted. Who had left her bleeding in the sand while he walked away. She had followed him once. Now she would end what he began. Lightning spidered across the mountains, turning the world white for a breath, then black again. She didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just sat in the dark of the broken hut, knees drawn to her chest, rifle resting across her thighs, listening to the storm tear itself apart outside. The others were asleep, or pretending to be. She could hear their breathing shift, uneven, haunted. Everyone dreamed of something different out here. But they all woke with the same hollow stare. Sometime near dawn, the rain stopped. The silence that followed was worse. They broke camp without words. Movement slow, worn. Each of them carrying more than just gear now. The path cut down into a narrow canyon, walls closing in like jaws. Water still trickled along the floor, shallow and cold, their boots sucking through mud with each step. She kept her eyes on the cliffs above. Her finger rested just outside the trigger guard. Old habits. The canyon twisted like a scar. Visibility was gone. Every few steps, someone glanced back over a shoulder. They weren't just worried about who might be behind them. They were wondering if this was the place it would all end. At midday, they stopped in a small hollow where the canyon widened. The sun pressed down like a weight. Steam rose from the wet stone. Miller crouched over the map, jaw tight. "We're close," 2 clicks from the coordinates Intel gave us. Ray snorted. Intel's been wrong before. Yeah, Miller said, but he's been right before too. The silence that followed was sharp. Everyone knew who he was. She stayed apart, leaning against the canyon wall, water dripping from her hair, rifle propped on her knee. No one asked her what she thought. No one noticed her thumb rubbing that worn crease in the folded paper in her vest, her son's drawing of the crow. The edges were fraying now. Like her. When they moved again, the air felt different. Still. Listening. Even the flies were gone. She felt it first, a shift in the wind, a sour taste on the back of her tongue. She raised her fist. The team froze. A heartbeat later she saw it. A strand of wire. Barely visible. Strung low between two rocks. Trip line. Her chest tightened. She traced the wire to a small mound of stones. Shape just wrong. IED. Her voice was a rasp. Trap. They backed off slow, boots whispering over stone. She crouched, eyes narrowing at the pattern, placement, angle, spacing. It was his style. His signature. He taught her to do it years ago. She stood, rain-soaked hair clinging to her jaw, and whispered, "He knows we're here." They veered off the canyon floor, scaling the cliffside, fingers clawing into crumbly stone, packs dragging them back. Her arms burned. Her lungs screamed. Halfway up, Ray slipped. Time fractured. His boot skidded on wet shale. His scream tore out. She lunged, hand locking around his strap. Her shoulder nearly ripped out of its socket. Miller grabbed them both, dragging them back onto the ledge. They lay there, gasping, mud streaked across their faces like war paint. Ray's laughed once, wild and hollow. "Thanks." She didn't answer. Couldn't. Her arm was shaking too hard to trust her voice. They climbed on. Slower now. Each of them measuring every breath. By nightfall they reached the ridge. Below them the compound. Old stone walls collapsed inward like broken teeth. Rusting metal roofs caved in. No smoke. No movement. Empty. Or pretending to be. Wind hissed through the jagged gaps. They watched for an hour. 2. No one spoke. Finally Miller exhaled. "We go in at dawn." Everyone nodded. She didn't. Because she could feel it. That strange pressure behind her eyes. That weight between her shoulder blades. He was there. She knew it. The way you know a storm is coming. Even before the sky goes dark. They dug shallow nests on the ridge, huddled low under camouflage tarps, staring down at the ruins while the night swallowed the valley. Cold seeped into her bones. Her lips went numb. Her body begged for sleep. But her mind wandered back. Back to the last day she saw him. It had been a village. Dust-colored, quiet, almost gentle. Intel said it was a safe house for armed smugglers. He said it was routine. She followed him in without hesitation. She always did. The explosion tore through the world before they even reached the door. Heat, light, sound all at once. Screams. Smoke. She remembered trying to crawl, her ears ringing, vision gone to static. He was standing through the haze. Unburned. Untouched. And walking away. He didn't look back. She had screamed his name until her throat tore. He never turned. They told her later it wasn't her fault. That he'd gone rogue, sold them out. But she had followed him there. She had trusted him. And that village had been full of children. A wind tore across the ridge, snapping her back to the present. Her cheeks were wet. Not from the cold. She wiped them dry with a shaking hand, breath breaking out white in the moonlight. She had survived, but survival wasn't the same as living, and she wasn't sure what she'd be once this was over. Below, a single light flickered inside the compound, then died. Her heart slowed. A grim calm settled through her limbs. It was time. The ridge was black and breathless. No wind. No sound. Even the night seemed to be holding its breath. She lay prone in the frostbitten dirt, scope trained on the compound below. Nothing moved. No guards. No heat signatures. Too quiet. A hollow silence, like the world was braced for something. Her finger hovered above the trigger. Muscles locked. Heart steady, unnaturally steady. She could feel him, like static crawling along her skin. Miller's whisper crackled in her ear. Go time, west wall breach. 2 teams, clean fast. She gave a small nod he couldn't see, then slid back from the ridge, boots silent in the loose gravel. The others followed, pale shapes fatting through the darkness. Her breath fogged as she pulled the mask over her face. The smell of earth and old blood filled her lungs. She welcomed it. Fear sharpened her. It always had. They moved like shadows down the slope, bodies pressed low, the ground crunching soft under their weight. She could hear her pulse in her ears, hear every scrape of fabric, every soft click of gear. When they reached the wall, she pressed a palm to the cold stone. It vibrated faintly, like it was alive. Miller's hand sign flashed. Stack up. She went first, because of course she did. Because if someone had to bleed for this, it would be her. Ray set the charge. A thin whisper of shaped explosive, precise, quiet. They pulled back. A dull thud. Dust. Silence. Then they were inside. The compound smelled of rot and rust. Their boots sank into dirt layered with old straw, broken tiles, discarded gear. Moonlight pooled through shattered beams above. She swept left. Scope up. Breath shallow. Empty rooms. Collapsed roofs. Crates gnawed open by rats. Nothing. Too clean. Too quiet. She hated it. A stairwell gaped at the far wall, descending into black. Cold air wafted up from it, sharp and metallic. Her gut turned. She knew. Miller gave the go signal. They went down. The air grew colder with each step, the stone slick under their boots. Water dripped somewhere, slow and hollow. Their lights cut narrow tunnels through the dark. The smell hit her first. Oil, gunmetal, and something sour, like grief gone stale. Then the corridor opened into a wide chamber. Her breath caught. Maps. Stacks of them. Marked with pins, notes in that sharp, precise handwriting she knew too well. Rifles laid out like bones on workbenches. Comms rigs humming faintly. And on the far wall, photographs. Faces. Hers. Miller's. Ray's. Everyone on the team. Crosshairs inked over each. Her stomach went hollow. He'd known every step they were taking. Had been waiting for them. A slow clap echoed behind her. She spun. Scope up. And froze. He stepped from the shadows like he'd been carved from them. Older. Gaunter. But those eyes. The same cold fire. Her throat closed. She couldn't breathe. Hello, Lieutenant, he said. Her old rank. Soft, almost fond. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Then stopped. Because Ray stood behind him. Hands bound. Mouth gagged. Blood on his temple. A knife pressed to his throat. Her chest imploded. Miller swore under his breath. They all froze, weapons trembling. The man smiled, that same quiet, poisonous smile. "You followed me," he said to her. Even after all this time. She wanted to scream, wanted to tear the world apart. Instead, she said, "You left them to burn." He tilted his head. "They were already ash. You just didn't want to see it." Her hands shook. The barrel wavered. Her vision tunneled until there was only him and the echo of her heartbeat. He stepped closer, dragging Rays with him. "Do you understand yet? The game you were playing was never about duty. It was about survival. You just dressed it up prettier." The knife gleamed. Rays whimpered. Her mind fractured. Duty. Survival. Her son's small hand, frozen in the window the day she left. All of it crashing together. She had followed this man into fire, trusted him with her life, and he had left her for dead. No more. Her rifle dropped an inch. Deliberate. He smiled wider, thinking she was breaking. And in that breath, she moved. The shot cracked like thunder in the narrow room. Clean. Final. He jerked, eyes wide, then crumpled like a shadow losing shape. The knife clattered to stone. Rays collapsed, gasping. Silence swallowed everything. No one moved. Her rifle lowered. Her hands were steady now, completely still. Miller's voice came through like a ghost. "It's done." She stared at the body, at the man who had once been her world, and felt nothing. No triumph, no relief. Just an empty space where grief should have been. They burned the maps, smashed the radios, left the compound in flames, smoke twisting into the starless sky like something trying to escape. She watched it burn until her eyes stung, until the firelight painted their faces like war and ghosts. Then she turned and walked into the darkness without a word. Dawn broke over the forward operating base like a hesitant whisper, a pale light crawling across the fractured horizon. The night silence fractured with the low growl of distant helicopters and the crackling hiss of radio chatter. Dust swirled across the compound, clinging to boots, lashes, and the worn flags hanging limp on the poles. Ella sat on the steps outside the comms tent, her knees drawn up, helmet resting beside her. Her hands were raw, bandaged, still trembling faintly from everything that had passed. The mission had ended. Against all odds, they had made it back, all of them. She should have felt relief. But instead, she felt hollow. The faces of those she had almost lost flashed behind her eyes every time she blinked. Cooper bleeding out in the dust, Rays screaming coordinates through static, the captain limping with shrapnel tearing through his thigh, and her, frantically rebuilding a comms rig from burned-out scraps as mortars rained down, her voice breaking as she called for extraction. They lived because she didn't break. But the cost still echoed through her bones. Inside the hangar, the SEAL team stood in formation, bruised, battered, still wearing the grime of battle like second skins. Their eyes followed her when she walked in. Conversations stuttered. The atmosphere was strange, not hostile, not exactly reverent either, just quiet. She stopped mid-stride, her boots squealing on the polished concrete, and raised her eyebrows. "Did I grow a second head or something?" she muttered. Rays smirked faintly, something like that. Before she could ask, movement to her left caught her eye. Commander Nash, the grizzled SEAL leader, approached. His gait was steady, but his shoulders carried invisible weight. He stopped directly in front of her, looking down into her eyes with something unreadable. And then slowly, deliberately, he saluted. The room went dead silent. No one moved, no one breathed. For a heartbeat, Ella just stared, blinking like she didn't understand what was happening. This wasn't protocol. This wasn't normal. Nash saluted no one unless they had earned it in blood and fire, and she had no rank, no insignia, no official place among them. She was just the comms tech, the quiet one with the wires. Her throat tightened. Before she could think, her hand rose on instinct and returned the salute, her palm trembling midair. Nash's voice was low, graveled. "You didn't just keep comms alive. You kept us alive, all of us. That deserves more than medals." He dropped his hand. Around the hangar, the rest of the team followed one by one, each of them raising their hands, their battered arms straightening as they offered her the same gesture. A full SEAL team, saluting a girl with no rank, no name stitched above her chest. The sound of it wasn't audible, but it thundered in her chest. She turned away quickly, blinking hard, because if she let them see her cry, she might not stop. "Okay," she croaked, forcing a thin smile. "Someone's gonna have to explain to logistics how I fried half their equipment in the process." That broke the tension. Laughter rippled like a shockwave, warm and real, cracking the cold shell around them all. Cooper limped forward and clapped her on the back. "You saved my ass," he said. "Twice. Don't think we'll forget that." "Make it 3 times if you count yelling at me to duck," Reyes added, grinning. Ella swallowed the lump in her throat, managing only, "Just doing my job." But deep down she knew it had been more than that. Later in the quiet, she found herself back on the comms tower, sitting cross-legged in the high lattice of steel beams. Below her, the base sprawled like a patchwork of scars and hope. Soldiers moved like ants, repairing, resupplying, returning to routine, pretending life was normal again. Her headset lay in her lap, the one she had rebuilt mid-battle, soldering wires while explosions shook the ground. It was scorched and bent, one earpiece cracked, but it still worked, somehow. Like her. She thought of the moment the signal had gone through, her voice piercing the chaos, and how the extraction birds had come screaming out of the clouds like angels. She remembered Nash's voice in her ear. "Hold on, we're coming." And they had. And she had held. A flutter of movement drew her eyes. Commander Nash was climbing the tower's ladder. Slowly, carefully, as though the climb itself was heavier than usual. He settled beside her, not speaking at first, just watching the horizon burn gold. Finally, he said, "You know they wrote you up." She blinked. "Wrote me up for what? Unauthorized heroics." "For valor," Nash said simply. "For refusing to quit when everything said you should. For refusing to let us die." Ella laughed under her breath, shaking her head. "I'm not even enlisted." "Exactly." They sat in silence again. The wind tugged at her hair. "Why me?" she whispered. Nash didn't look at her, but his voice softened. "Because when everyone else waited for orders, you acted. That's leadership. That's rare. Doesn't matter what patch is on your shoulder. That's who people follow when it matters." His words sank like stones into her chest, steadying something inside her that had been spinning loose. Weeks later, stateside. The ceremony was small. No cameras, no reporters, just the SEAL team in clean dress uniforms and her in plain clothes, hands shoved awkwardly into her pockets. She stood while Nash spoke, his words clipped and formal but his eyes glinting with quiet pride. He told the story without drama, without flourish, just the truth. How she had stayed on comms while the firestorm closed in, how she had rebuilt a dead system under bombardment, how she had called in the birds that saved every man standing there alive. When he finished, he handed her a small box. Inside was a medal, she didn't even know which kind. Her hand shook as she closed it. I don't deserve this." "Yes," Nash said, "you do." Afterward, they gathered on the tarmac. The team was laughing, arguing over who owed who beers, life settling back into its ragged rhythm. Ella stood a little apart, the metal box heavy in her pocket, watching the sun sink behind the hangars. Reyes walked up and nudged her. "What now?" She smiled faintly. "I fix things, it's what I do." "You fixed more than wires out there," he said quietly. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. That night alone, she wrote a single line in her journal. Leadership isn't given. It's taken in the silence between heartbeats when lives depend on someone refusing to break. She closed the book, slid it into her pack, and finally let herself sleep. Epilogue. Months later, a new unit rotated into the base she once saved. Fresh faces, green uniforms. They walked past the comms tower without noticing the tiny piece of metal wedged between two beams, a scorched, cracked headset tied there with a strip of paracord. They didn't know whose it was, but the SEALs did. And when they passed through again on another mission, they looked up, nodded silently, and moved on, carrying her story with them, like an invisible banner. Because sometimes, the ones who lead the fiercest are the ones no one asked to lead at all.